I don't know if you've ever been caught in a lie. I don't know if maybe you told a little bit of a mistruth and then it came out down the road. Me being a good old-fashioned pastor, like I even when Beck and I were first married back in the day, I knew not to tell like overt lies, but like my poison of choice was to just like withhold small details, right? Like I just would, tell a story and just kind of like leave a few little things out, to my own benefit, and then in the long term to my own damage and harm. Well, this was a long time ago when Instagram had first come out. It had to be like over 12 years ago. I was a youth pastor, and one of the older kids that I had, taken on some trips and stuff, I heard he was getting into some trouble, going through hard times. So I thought, this kid loves Instagram. He loves photography. I love photography too. Let's go hang out. And I had seen this like trend on Instagram. It was like a hashtag called steel spinning. All right, check out these photos. They're pretty legendary. I took these photos. What you do is you get steel wool and you set it on fire and you swing it around yourself and take a long exposure, all right? So this is the kind of chaos that we got up to. And I'm like, this kid's struggling in his life and his walk with the Lord. Let's go play with fire together, So we're taking these photos and we're taking this one here. This is the actual moment. He's up there spinning this flaming steel wool, and then I'm standing below it like Terminator or something. And you can actually see the sparks that are going off to the left. Well, my grand plan was to like have fun with him and then go out to eat and then talk about the hard stuff in his life. But instead what happened was these sparks caught an entire field on fire, right? And there were no houses around, but this entire field goes up in flames. We're in Albuquerque. It's just this huge brush fire. And I run into the flames and I'm like trying to put it out with my feet. The greatest part was we were looking at the picture on my camera and we noticed that it was on fire. So I'm like jumping in the flames and we run to the car. Fortunately, no houses burned down and there was a fire department right nearby. And we just like sat in the car and watched the firefighters like douse the flames with water. And then we're all sweating. We go get some Gatorades. And I'm like, so man, how's your walk with God? and I get home from that. Becca and I are newlyweds. She's like, hey, how'd it go with your student? I'm like, fine. went good. He's really struggling. Leave it at that. Well, like a year later, I'm at a party telling this story. She's like, you did what? Like, what happened? You almost like burned down all of North Albuquerque or something? She found out all this time later, obviously damaged the relationship. Well, Jesus's little brother, what a great start to a sentence. Jesus' little brother, James, in his letter to the churches, he says that our tongues, our words, are like a fire, that they're like a spark that can ignite a forest fire and can be incredibly destructive. How many relationships have ended over words? How many friendships have been torn apart by gossip? How many harsh things, out-of-pocket stuff has been said that tore apart workplaces, or just a fiery email that's sent off? How many people have been canceled for something that they put on the internet? How many actual wars have been fought over words? Just sometimes you spill the tea and people get burned. People get scalded when you spill the tea sometimes, and there have been lives that have been lost. If you look into it, there's stories in history where an insult has actually led to two kingdoms waging war against each other. Words are powerful, and they can be powerful in a good way, or they can be powerful in a harmful way. Now, we are in the book of Proverbs, and Proverbs are great because it's David, David and Goliath, if you're new to church. He has a son later, his son Solomon. He's incredibly wealthy and successful and very wise, and he compiles all of this wisdom. And Proverbs is a great book of the Bible to read because you're kind of like reading Solomon's Threads account. Like you're reading his posts on X.com, and like some of them are connected because he's on a burst, he's bursting them out, and then others, they're not connected, but you just kind of read them, and you can read through it in the morning before you go to work, and just wait till you find one that kind of hits you, and just think about it, maybe write it down in a journal, and this book can change your life. Now, maybe you're here this morning and you're not sure if you're a Christian. You're like, I don't even know if I believe in God. Like, I saw the Skeptics Welcome thing on your website, and I kind of dig that. And I just want you to know we're so glad that you're here. But even as I just read this passage from Proverbs chapter 12, wouldn't the world be better if more people lived this way? Just these simple truths that are laid out in this passage, these axioms, wouldn't your life be better if you lived like they were true? Wouldn't your community be better? Wouldn't your relationships be better if you lived like these things were true? Well, let's do it. Let's try to live these principles out, and we'll see the power that can give us the power to actually change. So I got 5 thoughts coming your way. Going to be a rapid fire burst, all incredibly practical, up in your business, nitty gritty, rubber meets the road, nuts and bolts, but we got 5 rapid fire thoughts. The first one is build up. Build up. Verse 14, from the fruit of their lips, people are filled with good things. In the work of their hands, bring them a reward. This is a simple concept. It's that when you are intentional to use beautiful words and do beautiful work, you can build a beautiful life. That's all it's saying. It's a very simple concept that when you choose to use beautiful words like fruit, right? Imagine beautiful blossoming pomegranates or pears or whatever. You go to the Hood River and pick a bunch of fruit. Imagine beautiful fruit. When you use beautiful words and you do beautiful work, you can build a beautiful life. And think about people who have used those words of healing. Think of the coach who really encouraged you. Think of the parent who believed in you and they noticed those traits in you. Imagine the person who called out those good qualities in you. Maybe it shaped your destiny. So for sure, for me, somebody going, Jesse, you have leadership. Like when you talk about God's word, somebody saying that to me shaped the course of my whole life, shaped my destiny. And when you use those beautiful words and you walk around your whole life encouraging people, building others up, you can build a beautiful life, a life that is constructive rather than destructive. Now, I was hanging out with my brother and my nieces a long time ago, and they were teaching my nieces that words are bricks, not bullets. Words are bricks, not bullets, right? We want to build up, not tear down, not cut people down. And my little niece, hilarious, she goes, you could hurt someone with a brick too. Genius, genius. But you get the idea, Is your tongue, do you see it more as an instrument of construction? Or if you're being honest, is your mouth more of an instrument of destruction? You're like, well, I'm just direct. I just speak my mind. I just tell people like it is. Yeah, you're a forest fire. You're going around burning things down. Proverbs says that the wise person uses their words with wisdom. fMRI studies, there's multitudes, these loads of these studies actually say that negative things stick with people exponentially more than positive things. And you could, I receive compliments and I can get like 20 nice remarks about the ministry, 20 nice remarks about a sermon, 20 people saying encouraging things. That was great. That was fantastic. But that one person who's like, what's wrong with you? I hated that. I think you're wrong. Like, which one are you going to be thinking about the rest of the week? You're going to be thinking about the spiteful, hateful words. And I love this verse in verse 16. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Now, do you want to heal people or do you want to harm people? Ask yourself that when you talk. I've shared this before, but I think it's so worthwhile. It's just realizing that in your friendships, in your workplace, in your relationships, imagine almost like a bank account, right? You have this bank account and there's in the black or in the red. And anytime you have to critique someone, and critique is necessary, we're going to get there in the message. It's necessary sometimes to critique someone. It's necessary sometimes to point out issues. But view that as a withdrawal, right? That's a withdrawal. And when you say something encouraging, it's like a deposit. Well, John Gottman and Julie Gottman, they're experts, and I've quoted them many times. They say that in a good relationship, there should be a 20-to-1 ratio of good versus bad. And they're not talking about just words. They're talking about affection, hugs, kisses, just making a meal, doing a favor, anything. But I want to encourage you to live that way. Live with a 20-to-1 ratio. And they say in a conflict, there should be a 5-to-1 ratio of trying to understand the person, saying, hey, we're on the same team here. I want to understand this is a frustrating thing, but we're working through it. Just because here's the deal. If you go around complaining, you go around criticizing, you will go bankrupt relationally. You're making withdrawal, and you're not making any deposits. You wonder why the relationship goes bust. You got to make those deposits of appreciation. And I know that some of us come from cultures where maybe appreciation wasn't normal. Our parents never complimented us. Our parents never thanked us. We never watched them appreciate one another. I just always want to tell you, change is possible. You can start a new legacy. You can start a new trajectory. You can form new habits. I was hanging with a friend, and he was telling me something beautiful from a family background that he learned, and that's that in certain Hawaiian cultures, when a family member dies, people don't know what to say, right? The person's dying, and they want to say something meaningful, but they don't know what to say, and there's all this baggage sometimes, and all these, hurts and wounds. They don't know what to say, but in this Hawaiian culture, they just have it established that everybody says, I love you. Everybody says, I'm sorry. Everybody says, I forgive you. And everybody says, will you forgive me? That their whole tribe, their whole culture is just like when somebody's dying, this is what you say. You say, I love you. You say, I'm sorry. You say, I forgive you. Will you forgive me? And everybody says it. And then, well, I'll tell you what, don't just wait till people are dead. Don't just wait till they're dying. Your whole life will get better if you say these things. You could write these are so simple. But I think if we have that reminder and we start to practice the simple things, do you want your work life to get better with your coworkers? Do you want your romantic relationships to get better? Do you want your friendships to get better? Just practice these simple things. I appreciated when you brought coffee to the meeting. You are important to me. You matter to me. I'm just so glad you're here. I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry. I forgive you. Will you forgive me? If you just make these a regular part of your vocabulary, you already be like getting out of the red. You'll be getting into the black. Your life will get better just with these simple words. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise bring healing. Now, I want to clarify something that's kind of speaking directly to our culture. Language is not violence. Okay, language is not violence. Actually, psychologists say that when you equate language with all language violence, I just say something you disagree with, that's violence. That's not true. That actually ruins rational discourse. That ruins the exchange of ideas. That even ruins the ability to just think inductively and deductively and debate. It stifles debate, which is something that should be good in any society. And avoiding your triggers actually isn't good for you. Now, you need to be maybe careful and wise about it if you've got like real trauma. But trying to avoid all your triggers is actually a recipe for what's called psychological fragility. When you're always trying to avoid your triggers, you just become a more fragile and fragile person. So this passage isn't saying that all language is violence, but here's the deal. Naomi Eisenberg found that abusive, harsh, berating, screaming, shouting, racial slurs, those things, not just I disagree with you and here's why, but berating, harsh language. She's a researcher at UCLA. She said that in an fMRI scanner, when somebody screams and shouts swear words at you, it actually affects the exact same centers of the brain as physical pain. You know that if you are regularly the recipient of abusive language, you actually die younger? There are those who speak like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise promotes healing. You can heal people. You can build people up. And I'm sure there might even be painful memories that are coming to you now, But hopefully you can also think of some good memories. Those people who said, I understand, who showed you empathy, who vocalized their concern for you, their love for you. Man, let's be people who are spiritual and verbal architects, not verbal arsonists. Let's build up one another. So build up. Next thing is slow down. Slow down. Fools show their annoyance at once, but the prudent overlook an insult. It's so easy to just like have a hair trigger. Oh, they did what? You just, launch on them. You got like a Gatling gun, like mowing people down on the beach at Normandy or something. Some of us have those kinds of motor mouths, and we're quick-tongued and we're sharp, or maybe we can't even say it in the moment, but like as we're driving away, we're like, I should have said this, I should have said that to that person. But anybody can get angry. Any person can just like lose it on someone. That doesn't take much. Like anybody can do that. But what really is rare and what's really priceless is being the kind of person who can stay calm under pressure. And how many times have we fired off that text and regretted it? How many times have we said that thing to a roommate or a parent or somebody we're dating, and then we regretted it later after the fight? What's been amazing? Like the thing I'm going to say I'm thankful for on Thanksgiving is like the unsend button. Anybody have that on the iPhone? Like the unsend feature? That's nice. You don't want to know my toxic trait? My toxic trait is proofreading after I push send. That is my, man, I can never learn. I'll never get better at that. But here's the problem though. There's not an unsend feature in real life. There's not an unsend feature in the kitchen table or in the car, when you're having that argument. Those words get out there. You can't push unsend. And so we got to learn to slow down. Slow down. James, again, he says, let every person be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the right kind of living that God desires. I'm going to say that again because it's such a worthwhile thing. Let every person be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because anger does not produce the right kind of living. You get angry at your boyfriend, you get angry at your spouse, your wife, you get angry at your best friend, you get angry at this person. That's not going to change them. Human anger does not produce the kind of right living that God desires. And these are truths I'm growing in, and I want to be a lifelong learner. I don't have this master or anything, but it's good to just let some things go. Some things do need to be confronted. But look at this verse with us one more time, the verse from verse 16. Not 8. 16. Yeah. Fools show their annoyance at once, but the prudent overlook an insult. Some things you can just let go. You don't have to get on people about every tiny little thing. As a matter of fact, if you do, what will happen? You'll go relationally bankrupt. If you make withdrawals about every little thing and you're not building the person up, you're going to get into the negative. There's some things you just got to just brush them off your shoulder. Is this really worth a fight? Is every hill worth dying on? You just overlook it, let it go. Another thing that has been a game changer in my life recently is just the idea that clarification is better than assumption. Clarification is better than assumption. So it's so easy to assume, that person doesn't text me back. They must hate me. They must hate my guts. They must be mad at me. They must want me to fall off the face of the earth. It's like, or they're just taking a really long nap. It's like, or maybe they were driving down the road and they're like, I don't really want to crash going 70 miles per hour on the 84, so I'm not going to text them back, and then they forget, because 50 more texts come through. Clarification is better than assumption. See that? And we just lose it on people, don't we, sometimes? Like, you're lazy, everybody else can show up on time, everybody else pulls their own way, you always do this, you never do that. You just start tearing into someone. But I want to take a little tip from Ted Lasso. Be curious, less judgmental. Barbecue sauce. Be curious, less judgmental. And so what is actually helping me and Becca and I's marriage even is just going, I noticed that, so let's say something. I noticed that you made a huge mess with your coffee grounds all over the kitchen counter, Jesse. And I was just curious, what happened? Like, were you late to a meeting? I was just curious. So I noticed that, and I'm curious why. I noticed that, I'm curious why. I noticed that, I'm curious. And maybe it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I got this call, and it turned out that the landlord for the church was here, and I had to run out the door really quick. I shouldn't have left the coffee grounds like that. I'll totally clean it up. But when you rush in, like, you never clean up, you always do this, you don't appreciate how hard I work in here. It's like, wow, you just create this massive conflagration, this giant fire burning down, the brush fire in Albuquerque. and it's like, but if you just would have been curious and less judgmental, and obviously I'm using an example with me, but I do the same thing to her, and it's just asking questions rather than rushing to conclusions. Being willing to ask those kinds of questions. Just saying, I noticed that, and I wonder why. Just slowing down, being more gentle, being more patient. Now, I had a interesting thing happen where I was on a really large church staff, and a woman who worked on my team, she had an interaction with this guy who'd been a Christian a long time, been in the church a big time, big guy, just big muscle-bound dude. And he just pulverized this girl on my team, reduced her to tears. And this is a guy, and I love him, totally forgive him and everything. But like, he, been following Jesus a very long time. And this conversation stuck with me so much. I go, hey, sir, like, you want to know the number one emotion that Jesus has in all of the Gospels is compassion. More than any other attribute in the entire Gospels, compassion. You said this to this person, and they were having a hard week, and she's just crying, and your words really tore her up. Do you think maybe you could apologize? I think showing her some compassion would be good. And his response to me was, I'm not Jesus. And I go like, yo, you've been on this church staff for like 20 years, bro. Like, the entire goal of the Christian life is that you become more like Jesus. You grow more like Christ over the years. You should become a more compassionate person as time goes on. And those words just kind of haunted me and stuck with me. Here's the deal. We are saved by grace. God accepts you at your worst. He accepts us at our worst. He accepts us when we're a mess. But in his grace, he wants us to become our best. God accepts us at our worst, but he wants us to become our best. And slowing down, choosing compassion, choosing patience, choosing gentleness, choosing clarification over assumption, man, it will put out a lot of conflicts, a lot of fires. Slow down. So build up, slow down. Next up, listen in. Listen in. The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. I got this. I'm doing my own thing. I'm being my own person. I'm going my own way. Proverbs says you're a fool. You're a fool. The wise listen to advice. They take advice. They listen to advice. Now, we live in a culture where there's a phrase that says unsolicited advice. I don't want your unsolicited advice. And as the giver, I actually think we should respect that. I think before you give anyone advice, you should ask for permission. I think you should say, hey, I care about you. I value you. The way I like to do it is position, right? Going, I care about you. You matter to me. I want to see you thrive in life. So position, permission. Hey, is it okay if I offer you some insight, some perspective? And then proposition. You make the proposal of what you think could be a better way of living, a better way of doing things. But this whole unsolicited advice thing, as a giver, I think it's valuable as permission. But as a receiver, I think we should be as receptive as possible. I even try to learn from my critics. And I'm learning to learn from my critics to realize, even in the harshest criticism, there's often something to be learned. Sometimes it's a kernel of truth. Sometimes it's like, just don't act like that guy. like that's the thing that you can learn. But you can try to learn something from everyone. One of my favorite quotes is by a historian named Daniel J. Boorstein. And he says, the greatest obstacle to understanding is not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge. Let me say that again. The greatest obstacle to understanding is not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge. In other words, our biggest problem isn't what we don't know. Our biggest problem is what we think we already know. So this axiom to remember is stay teachable and you'll be unstoppable. Because if you think you know all there is to know, you'll plateau. You go, I got it all figured out. I got life cracked. I got it down. You're not going to grow. You're going to plateau. You're going to just, you're never going to be able to level up. So have a receptive attitude that wants to listen. Stay teachable and you'll be unstoppable. You know who didn't want unsolicited advice? NASA. NASA was not interested in unsolicited advice. I don't know if we got any Gen X here. We probably got some boomers, a few in the room, maybe some Gen X. I'm millennial. This was the most traumatic event of my older siblings' lives of, Gen X. And that probably explains why they're so much more stable than me. Because like the Space Shuttle Challenger, that was like the only bad thing that happened in their childhood. For us millennials, it's like a space shuttle blows up every week. For us, it's just like something horrible happens, 9/11, pandemic, recession, just like assassinations. The world is on fire. It's all the time. But this is not to downplay the Space Shuttle Challenger, all right? It was bad what happened in the 80s. It was a bad thing. 7 people went up. Thousands of kids were there watching. Millions of people were watching on television. And the space shuttle goes up and all 7 people tragically lose their life. It is horrible. Want to know why it happened? Because NASA didn't want any unsolicited advice. Roger Boyce Jolly was an engineer, and weeks before the launch, he came to his supervisor and he said, there is a problem with this O-ring. There's a problem with the engineering on here. We need to fix this O-ring because if there's cold temperatures, like it could just be catastrophic. They just said, we didn't ask for your input. Go back down the hall, man. And here's the crazy part. Roger stood there, and 73 seconds before the explosion happened, he turned to his wife and said, they're all going to die. 73 seconds, unsolicited advice. Be a person who receives wisdom. Be a person who's receptive to people's input. The image of God, the doctrine of the image of God, means that even people who don't believe in God can sometimes give us valuable wisdom. That's like what the book of Jonah is all about. And be a receptive person. Be willing, to quote Jesus' brother again, be quick to listen, slower to speak, slow to become angry, quick to listen, be receptive, stay teachable, you'll be unstoppable. If you are a receptive person, you listen, to your spouse, you listen to your coworkers, you listen to your roommates, you listen to your friends. You actually, by the way, vocalizing empathy, we've talked about that before. Don't just tell them that you're listening. Do what's called reflective listening, where you say what they're saying back to them in different words, which really shows them that you're an engaged listener. Want to know what this will do? It will prevent relational explosions. It'll prevent your relationships from exploding. It'll prevent your life from exploding. So build up, slow down, listen in. Next up, we got be up front. Be up front. So in this passage, both in verse 17 and in verse 20, it talks about deceit. And there's obviously over deliberate deceit, huge problem. And there's kind of the deceit like me withholding information, which is still a huge problem. One of what I think one of the most common types of deceit is in a relationship is people who are afraid of conflict. They don't know what to do. They go, oh, everything's fine. I'm fine. Oh, no, it's all good. I love my job here. Yeah, everything's great, boss. Oh, yeah, relationship's great. Yeah, all good. No, all fine. and then you just vanish one day. Boom, I put in my resignation, I'm out of here. I think that's one of the most destructive kinds of deceit. Because everything's good, everything's cool, everything's fine, there's no problems here, I'm not mad, I'm not gone. And then you leave the person hanging out to dry, you leave them out. Samira said something so brilliant. Conflict is a part of every relationship. And she said something so brilliant. She goes, if you can't have conflict in your relationship, you don't have a relationship. You have an acquaintance. Just an acquaintance. Conflict is a part of every relationship. And some of us, we didn't grow up with conflict, healthy conflict. A lot of us had super, super negative examples. And, my kids will tell you, Beck and I, we are sinners. Like, I am not standing on this stage pretending to have all of this on lock or anything. But confrontation is really important. Now, I mentioned that Proverbs is a great book of the Bible to read if you want your life to change. Like I said, just read it, find a verse that really jumps out at you, copy it down in your journal, pray about it. I'm encouraging you guys to actually do that. Your life will get better if you read the book of Proverbs and lay it out. Now, there's other types of books of the Bible that kind of sabotage our Bible reading plans, don't they? The book of Leviticus comes to mind. And my little sister, this is what it's like growing up in a Christian home. My little sister was like 7, obviously a good reader. And she's like, I'm going to go on my devotions. She goes over and has her devotions. And she comes back and we're like, hey, what was your devotions about? She's like, sacrifices, blood. She'd been reading Leviticus. But I'll tell you what, the more you know about the ancient culture, the more you understand the world 3,000 years ago, even the book of Leviticus starts to make sense. But even just sitting on the surface, right there, like gold floating at the top of the river or whatever, there are still some bangers in the book of Leviticus. Check this out. Leviticus 19:17-18. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall surely rebuke your neighbor. That means to confront them. Confront your neighbor. You shall not bear sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance. You shall not bear any grudge against the children of your people. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Want to know how you love someone? You don't get revenge, first of all. You don't try to make them feel what you feel and make them hurt like you hurt and retaliate and make them feel dumb the way you felt dumb and make them feel offended the way you felt offended. That's not how you love someone. But how do you love someone? You confront them. You gently, patiently rebuke them and you tell them what's wrong. And just smoothing over everything and just, everything's all right. And then talking about them behind their back, that's called deceit. That's called a wicked tongue. That's called spilling the tea, but you spill the tea long enough, somebody's going to get scalded. Somebody's going to get burned. The way to love someone is to want them to grow. And to go, you know what? This immaturity in their life is going to hurt other people. It's going to hurt the community. I'm not just going to retaliate and trying to make them feel stupid. I want them to grow. I want them to mature as people. The way they're mistreating me, they're going to go mistreat other people that way. And so what's the most constructive way, the most helpful way, like an architect, I can build them up and help them grow in areas in their blind spots? And I think the permission thing is a good idea, and we're going to have a whole message on boundaries where we're going to talk about timing and space and those kinds of things. But here's a good way to be upfront, to rebuke, to confront, to have a more healthy conflict. So we're going to put this up here. This is from Pete Scazzaro and his wife, Gary. I just think this is so helpful. So ask permission. We already mentioned that. But then just say, I noticed, I'm curious why. I noticed you were late to the meeting, coworker. Just what's going on in your life? Is everything okay? I'm just wondering why you keep being late. Hey, I noticed you don't text me back when we're texting about this project. I really value when people text me back. I know you probably don't mean it this way, but it just makes me feel like what I'm saying isn't important to you when you go weeks without texting me back. I prefer this. I propose this. I request this. So I noticed. I'm curious. I value. I feel. I prefer. You see how it's not hostile? You always do this. You never do. You're never here for me. You are so lazy. You're so inconsiderate. You're so this. See how different this is? Hey, I noticed this happened. I'm curious why it happened. I really value it when the house is clean. It helps me relax. When the house is clean, I just feel like I can get home, I can relax. And when it gets dirty like this and I have to clean up other messes, it just makes me feel stressed out. I really prefer if you could put the dishes in the dishwasher the right way and not face them the wrong direction in there. But I'm the one who faces them the wrong directions. But I request and you make your request. And then Pete and Gary, they were saying that it can be a negotiation. Maybe you make a request. It's like, hey, can you do the dishes every week? Well, it's like, well, my busiest day of the week is Thursday. Is it okay if I do the dishes every day of the week, but on Thursday I don't do it because I get home late from work? You negotiate. You can have a negotiation there, and that's a more healthy way to have conflict. Now, not everybody's going to be reasonable, but the whole boundaries message is going to be on the fact that you're only responsible for yourself. You can't control the other person's behavior. So be upfront. It is not loving to just allow people to be super immature and foolish and hurtful and reckless. That's not loving. And then it's certainly not loving to just pretend like everything's fine and then just abandon the person and get out of there, or abandon the workplace or whatever it is. Be upfront. So let's look at them one more time together. Build up, slow down, listen in, be upfront, and then our final thought is look ahead. Look ahead. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment. Virtually everything in God's word is harder in the short term, but better in the long term. Almost everything about the Christian life is harder in the short term, better in the long term. The opposite, disobeying God, it's better in the short term, but horrible in the long term. And I'm not even talking about in the afterlife. I'm talking about in this life. Your consequences will catch up to you in this life. Your lies, my lies, they work for a while until they don't. Flattering people to get what you want, it works for a while, and then it doesn't. Gossiping, talking about people on their back, goes great for a while. Being a giga-chad, being all confident and dominant and bullying people and asserting yourself and being the dominant one, it works for a while. But what ends up happening? Your lies get found out. Your flattery gets shown to become fake. The people you're gossiping to start to realize that you're gossiping about them. Your dominance gets shown to be arrogance and obstinance. And what ends up happening is you end up burning down your whole life. The truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only for a moment. The book of Proverbs is all about wisdom. But you get in the New Testament and want to know what it says? Jesus has become for us the wisdom of God. Jesus was wise. Jesus, he always knew the right question to ask. He always knew the right things to say. Jesus was always compassionate. He never had a wrong word misplaced. He was always patient. He always knew the right thing. He knew how to speak the truth. Jesus, he never spoke lies. And we have, right? We've all said the wrong thing. We've all hesitated because of our fear of rejection. We've all hurt people with our wounds. We've all wounded different people. And you could be sitting here and you could be thinking about the times that you've been harsh, thinking about the times you've been deceitful, thinking about the times you've withheld information for your own benefit, like me. Thinking about those times, you could feel really guilty. But here's the deal. Guilt alone will not change you. Guilt, it'll make you change for a little while. Want to know what changes you? Is when your guilt collides with God's grace. When your guilt collides with the love of Jesus, that is what changes you. Jesus loves you when you're a fool. And truly believing that is the only thing that can make you wise.